Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown, founder and principal of K&B Consulting. Did you know that Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America, and yet they still face the most significant wage gap? Today, we are addressing this precious issue and exploring solutions. Our discussion centers on vital topics: if Black women were free, economic empowerment for Black women. I am thrilled to be in conversation with Teri Williams, President and COO of OneUnited Bank, the largest Black-owned bank in the United States. Teri's leadership and dedication to justice illustrates the transformative power of economic empowerment. Together, we will explore the significant topics and its potential for reshaping realities. Teri, the last time that we were in a public conversation was early October when we discussed the power shift, Black women at the forefront of change. A lot has or has not happened since then. How are you doing?
I'm good. And first of all, Kerry, thank you for having me. But I am good. I mean, I think it was definitely disappointing election results. And I would say I'm still recovering, going through sort of the stages of grief.
Absolutely.
But I am also, I'm encouraged by, our resilience. I feel like no matter what, we'll be fine.
No matter what, we will be fine. We have always been fine. I mean, that's just sort of who we are. It's in our DNA. I've been resting a lot as well. Disappointed, been doing a lot of writing, resting, reflecting, and really thinking about sort of what's next. And this conversation that I know is going to be powerful that we are having today is just, a part of that. And so there are just some things that we can control, some things that we cannot control, and our financial freedom doubling down and, liberating ourselves and determining what's next for us and our financial future and, shoring up things up for ourselves and, making some strides for our own wealth and determining our future is one of those. And I just want to jump right in
Yeah.
to one, just exploring the unique financial challenges Black women face around wage disparities, access to capital, wealth inequities, just to name a few. What are some of the things that you come to mind when you think about unique financial challenges that we face?
Yeah, I approach it from two standpoints.
Mhm.
One is I like to start with focusing on our assets as
Mm.
opposed to our challenges. And I
Okay,
know that
okay,
you can appreciate this even though you're asking about challenges.
sure,
But I like to focus on assets first because I don't think our challenges define us,
sure.
In fact,
Hmm.
as I look at, I mean, not just resilience, but the reality is that we are actually very good with money, despite
Hmm.
what people have said.
Yeah.
We definitely know how to make a dollar out of 15 cents. We know how to support a family with, less resources than, our white counterparts or
Hmm.
than and I think that we also, I know that we know how to juggle a lot of different balls and between our family and careers and we're one of the most entrepreneurial communities in the country. So I always start there, but you're right, there are some significant challenges. And those challenges are largely not due to us, but to history and a history of
Sure.
discrimination, where we were property as opposed to being able to buy property,
Hmm.
where a lot of programs that built a lot of white wealth, whether they're mortgages or even having access to capital for businesses, we were excluded from for many, many years, hundreds of years. As I always remind people, we've only been, legally free, for 60 years, since the Voting Rights Act was passed and since the Fair Housing Act was passed. So in the past 60 years, we've accomplished a tremendous amount.
That is a wonderful reminder, right? I mean, oftentimes people will have you thinking that it's a lack of desire, it's a lack of grit, it's a lack of just personal will, but there are some real historic oppressions and systemic barriers that really keep this reality, at afar. And so you talked about the legacy of enslavement, the Jim Crow laws, the segregation really significantly have impacted economic opportunities for Black women. You sort of nodded to the redlining, as well. I know that you are steeped in understanding that. Can you just spend a little bit of time of explaining that for us who may not know it that well, what
Yeah.
the impact of redlining did for wealth accumulation, wealth building, and even wealth transfer?
Yeah, yeah. Back in but from the beginning of time, I should say, but it
Hmm.
really made a big difference in the early 60s when, and even the 40s, I would say, when there were a lot of programs, government programs to finance homeownership. As you know, people are coming back from the war, the variety of wars. The government was providing, veteran home loans. They were providing home loans to white people to move to the suburbs and
Hmm.
creating whole communities that excluded Black people.
Mm.
And even worse, the Black communities that were in the city, largely in the cities, in the urban markets, were excluded, were specifically redlined, where banks and engaged in a racist practice of saying, we're not going to lend to these communities, and literally put a red line around our zip codes. So not only could we not move to these white communities in the suburbs and take advantage of these really cheap financing, but we also couldn't get loans for the communities where we lived because banks excluded us.
Hmm.
So we could not accumulate what was at the time a really, really inexpensive asset that today is worth, millions, billions, trillions when you add it up.
Right.
And the biggest difference today between Black and white wealth is homeownership.
Hmm.
And their leg up on home ownership really happened because of government programs and racist practices of banks. And there have been studies that have been done to show that the impact of that is still happening today. We're still living through the impact of that. That's why when I again look at our assets, the fact that we're here and we do have home ownership, not as
Hmm.
high as it should be or as high as it is for the white community, but in some places it is very high. And on average, it's about 40 to 50% in comparison to 70% for the white community. So we're still significantly below where we could have been if things were fair, but we still have gone from really near zero, where we not only could not buy, but we were property, to getting to the point where, almost a majority of our community are homeowners.
Well, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. So you started off with our assets,
Yeah.
and we started moving into some of the challenges that Black women face. And there's just a lot of data around that. We have wage disparities where Black women still earn about 64 cents for every dollar, even though we can make a dollar out of
Dollar out
15
of 50
cents.
cents. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But we still make 64 cents on a dollar for every white non-Hispanic male, which just still underscores the persistent wage gap.
Mhm.
Access to capital, especially for Black women entrepreneurs. I think there was a study, Teri, where Black women received less than 3% of venture capital funding,
Yes.
which is pretty significant. And if they do seek business loan funding, they oftentimes encounter higher interest rates and stricter loan conditions. Can you speak to that any?
Yes, it's definitely true that we're not getting our fair share of venture capital dollars, private equity dollars, or bank business loans. And when we do present ourselves, we have to, I mean, be twice as good, or there's sort of a hurdle that we have to overcome. But again, I'm going to say
We
that,
do.
yes, the good news is that there has been somewhat of a level playing field as it relates to wealth accumulation,
Okay.
really as a result of technology.
Mm,
So it used to be when you started a business, you had to, have a physical footprint. You had to have brick and mortar. You
mm.
had to either rent an office or own an office. And if you didn't rent an office or own an office, people really didn't take you seriously.
Okay.
And the cost of that was very high. Um, Whereas today, again, because of technology, we have the opportunity to create businesses with less of a upfront cost.
Hmm.
There is also a ability to get information that didn't exist before. And I'm going to talk about banking as an example. There's all kinds of bank regulations. And we used to have these books, used to have these books all over the office where we would get actually pages to the books sent to us so we could update the books with the
Hmm.
updated regulation. It was a physical process. And so when you think about it, how many of your teammates have to get this information and be able to access this information that's in some library in our executive office in comparison to today, where all that information is online,
Digital.
not just
Hmm.
available to us as bankers, but available to you as customers.
Mm.
So the amount of information that's available today, the ability to access not only information, but to start businesses with less upfront capital is better than it has ever been. In fact, one of the things that I recommend to entrepreneurs, I always ask the question, do you own you? I can even
Mm.
ask you that. I can even ask you that.
Okay.
Do you own you? And what I mean by that is, do you own your trademarks? Do you own your name? Do you own your URL? And I know you do own your
Yeah.
URL, but
Yeah.
but a lot of it doesn't cost that much. A URL is not that expensive. In fact, I also say don't build your business on somebody else's URL. So if you can't own it, you need to change your name
Right.
to something that you can own. But the cost of a URL is not very expensive. The cost of a trademark is not very expensive. And we follow trademarks because we're protecting ours. And I see a lot of Black businesses that are now filing for trademarks because that's intellectual property that we can own. So, although it is true that we're not accessing or don't have access to the amount of dollars, and that does need to change, I would also say what's equally true is that the amount of dollars that are needed to start a business are a whole lot less than they used to be.
We talked about assets, we talked about some challenges, and we started talking about some effective strategies and solutions to empower Black women economically. What are some of the things that you would offer that both individuals and organizations can do to empower Black women?
So, I can think of three things that I would recommend.
Okay.
The first one is to set up an automatic savings plan.
Okay.
And I know that sounds boring, and I know, your audience is going to be like, yeah, spoken like a banker. But the reason that I say that is because one of the things that wealthy people know is that if the money goes in your pocket, you're more likely to spend it.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter how much it is. It's like, it could be $1,000, it could be $100,000. It could be $1. If it goes in your pocket, you're more likely to spend it. So you
Okay.
really do need to set up an automatic savings plan so that the money goes into a savings account automatically and you don't touch it. So
Okay.
that's number one. And I will tell you that if you do that, you'll be surprised how much money you save over time.
Hmm.
So that's number one. The second thing I would say, and again, this is going to sound like a banker, but I highly recommend you buy a home, even if it's a hut.
Okay.
And I say that because we all have this vision of our dream home. You
Hmm.
know, I remember like my dream home was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that mansion that I thought I could afford because I thought a judge could afford it when neither one was the case. I got out of school and I'm like, okay, a judge can't afford that house. That was unrealistic, and it's just an unrealistic house in Bel
It
Air
was
to afford.
TV. Yeah.
Yes, it was TV. So, but we have these visions of what a house should look like that we want to
Hmm.
buy,
Hmm.
and what wealthy people know is that you got to be in the game. So you got to start building equity. I
Hmm.
just read this recent statistic which saddened me, which said the average first-time home buyer today, the age is mid-30s, and it
Wow.
used to be mid-20s.
Hmm.
And they were saying that 10 years of wealth accumulation is missing for this next generation.
Mm.
People used to buy earlier and then they would have not they wouldn't necessarily stay in their first home, but they continue to accumulate equity through real estate throughout their lives.
Right.
Whereas because younger people are getting in later and paying rent for those 10 years, they're not able to accumulate that wealth.
Right.
So I say to young people, buy something, even if it's a hut, even if it's a studio, even if it's not in the best neighborhood, but it gets you in the game. And then from that appreciation, you'll be able to sell and buy another home and then another
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
But it's important to get in. And then the third thing, which really does go to entrepreneurship. And the third thing I would say is if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to have three plans. Three plans.
Three plans. Okay.
Not one, not five. Three.
The three. Okay.
The magic number of three.
All right. What are these
The
three
reason
plans?
why, yes, you gotta have three plans for success. The reason why I say you have to have three is because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So one is definitely not going to do. And I can't tell you how many, even large companies, I look at Blockbuster as an example, put all their eggs into the basket of having these stores and these videos that people can, wanted to walk in and rent from them. They put all their eggs in that basket. That's not uncommon. And yet at the same time, it's not it's not a good strategy. So you
Okay.
definitely don't want one plan for success. But you also don't want five
Hmm.
because you want to focus, focus, focus. So three is to me the magic number. It's enough opportunities for you to say, I'm going to try these three things.
Hmm.
And I'm going to expect that at least one of them is not going to work. And maybe
Hmm.
two of them won't work, but that
Okay.
will still leave me one for
Okay.
success.
Okay.
So people come to me and they say, okay, this is my plan. I'm like, okay, well, what's your other plan? And what's the other plan after that? And it catches people by because they want to know what I feel about their first plan. And my view is like, I could think your first plan is great. I would still have three plans.
Okay. I was like, well, where are your other two in the event?
Yeah.
I see where you're going. I see where you're going there. I would add a couple of things. Maybe this is on the organizational side. So there's some things that people can do individually, but there are some things that organizations can do to support or that people can tap into within their organization. So there's mentorship programs. And so connect to seasoned professionals. Like there are a number of affinity organizations where Black women who are entering various industries, they can provide guidance and knowledge and support to navigate career paths and business growth. Skill development, regardless as to where people go, there's always going to be technology, there's always going to be finance, there's always going to be leadership. And so, how to equip yourself with tools to thrive in competitive fields, regardless. So, what's the training? Are there workshops? So, how do you take advantage of those opportunities? And then, networking opportunities. How are people connecting? We have to, still get out and meet people. So either seeking those opportunities or organizations, rather that's a place where you work, or there are some places in your community or affinity groups where Black women professionals for facilitating collaboration, for supporting and sharing resources. We have to, not hoard it all for ourselves and to share what we do have. And so there are a number of things to continue to propel us forward. Entrepreneurship is definitely an opportunity for people to consider. Maybe not now. I mean, people are in different phases of their life. When I had two small kids earlier on, there was no way that I would entertain or consider entrepreneurship. I just didn't personally have the guts, to do it. There are some people that are bolder and braver than I was. I have a 31-year-old. She was just like, I'm not working for anybody. I was like, you do it. Very excited about her drive. Maybe she gets it from me. But entrepreneurship is a catalyst. I mean, it does have real power in driving economic independence for Black women. And if I have had access to the strategies that I've had like later in my career, earlier in my years, I may have charted down a different path, but you can build a business and create revenue streams and generate employment opportunities for other people and do very interesting things in community for broader economic growth. I mean, it is so powerful and a real thing. And so,
It's
which
interesting you would bring your daughter, because I do think the next generation, I'm gonna say our parents and our grandparents were entrepreneurs because they had to be. I mean, we
that's right,
couldn't, segregation. We couldn't go into
right?
the stores or whatever. So,
Hmm.
and then we came along and we were able to get into corporations, and a lot of us did that, and we took
Right,
jobs.
right.
I think this next generation, like your daughter and other, young folks are making that conscious decision about whether or not they want to work for someone else or start a business. And you're right, there are significant opportunities on the entrepreneurship side for young women.
Yes. Speaking of entrepreneurship side for young women, I know OneUnited Bank's role, and there's been some success stories. I would love to spend some time on what the bank is doing now, if there are some success stories that you can share with us, and what's on the horizon for OneUnited Bank and empowering Black women.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned, Carrie, that we focus on chambers of commerce.
Mm,
Uh, and I would highly recommend that people join the local chambers, Black and white chambers.
yes, yes. Hmm.
There's so many resources there. And so one of the things that we do at OneUnited is to support those chambers, not just with contributions, but also with hard work,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
guidance, because we strongly believe that we are better united and we can learn from each other. And there's a
Sure.
lot of resources that are there. There are grants, there's technical assistance, there are relationships and networking. And so we are in our markets, we are very actively involved in the chambers. There's also a chamber of chambers for Black chambers.
Hmm.
that brings us all together. So that is something that, One United is very much involved in, and it really allows us as a bank that's in Boston, Miami, and LA to maintain sort of that local presence by being involved in those local chambers. The
Great.
other thing that we have done, I shouldn't say that we've done, but that we're doing because it's really our focus for 2025. And it's not entrepreneurial, but it goes back to that homeownership, is
Hmm.
that we are offering down payment assistance programs. Our community does not take advantage of these programs as much as we should. I talked about years ago how they redlined us. Well, today, there are actually programs that will give you money to buy a home. The program that we're launching we will give up to $50,000. When I
Wow.
say we, not we, it's really our partnership with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston is offering up to $50,000 in down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Wow.
So our focus is to really help our community get into homes and take
Okay.
advantage of these programs. So that's another thing that's on the horizon that we're about to launch. And so your audience hears about it first.
First. All right.
And the funds are limited, and it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
So if you are in Boston, Miami, or LA, and you are a first-time home buyer, definitely connect with us at oneunited.com/home loans, and you'll be able to learn about these programs as they're introduced. I don't want to call us having a supplier diversity program because it really is who we are, that
Okay.
we hire, partner with Black-owned businesses. So
Okay.
our marketing firm, Circle of One Marketing, is a Black-owned firm.
Hmm.
We have an artist, actually, an artist in residence who's a Black artist who does our cards, or, if you go to oneunited.com, card design, you'll see these fabulous cards with Black people. These are cards that was done by our artists. When we do construction, really every way we can, furniture, office
Hmm.
furniture. There's a Black-owned firm here in Miami, Apricot, that provides us office furniture. So we really try to not just promote banking Black, but also buying Black, building Black, and figuring out ways to circulate our dollars within the community.
What's the statistic for circuit for how long dollars
Yeah.
stay in the black Black community? Is it like six
Like two
days?
seconds, like two seconds. And what that means is, and it is a good question.
Hmm.
So, you think about yourself, you get paid. You say,
Yeah.
where does your money go? And how
Hmm.
much of that money actually stays in the Black community versus goes in other communities?
Hmm.
Starting with, where do you bank?
Hmm.
If you don't bank with a Black bank, your money is actually being deposited not in our community. So I can
Right.
start there. Then let's
Right.
say, okay, you bank with another bank and not a Black bank. When you pay rent, is your landlord Black? Are you, is that a way in which you are contributing to the wealth in our community? Then you say, well, no, my landlord is not, Black, and I don't live in the Black neighborhood. Okay, when you buy clothes or buy groceries,
Hmm.
when you get your hair done, all the things, your nails. I mean, all the things, all the ways in which you spend money. One of the challenges we have is that we don't circulate dollars in our community. And an even bigger challenge is that we don't trust ourselves.
Mm.
I'm going to use a bank as an example. We are an FDIC insured bank. Your money is safe with us. If you look at Hispanic American banks, the largest Black-owned bank, a Hispanic American bank is about $20 billion. The
Hmm.
largest Asian American bank is $30 billion.
Hmm.
The largest Black-owned bank is less than $1 billion.
Wow.
And the reason is not that we have less money as a community in total, it is that we don't bank with ourselves.
Right.
And it is a trust issue. And it's one
Mm.
that as a community, we need to learn to get over. And we
Trust
are learning.
ourselves.
So let me
Yes.
say this. Yes. I mentioned this too. I have a 30-year-old daughter as well. And, I was saying, I told her, we grew up with this saying that their ice is colder. And she looked
Mm.
at me like, it's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, if you have a choice of a white doctor and a black doctor, you go to the white doctor. If you have a choice of a white bank and a black bank, you go to the white bank. You have a choice of but everything is like their ice is colder.
Hmm.
And I think that saying is reflective. Ice is ice. You know what I mean?
Ice
It's
is
like,
ice.
in fact, we know that we have to be twice as good.
Hmm.
So, the reality is that you're going to get better service if you went to a black business. At the same time, we don't believe that. And that's something that we are getting over. Young people don't have that view. They're like, what you talking about, lady?
Right.
We,
Right.
we know that, that we're the bomb. But
Right.
that's a generational shift that's happening, which is a good thing. I'm curious, Kerry, as to your thoughts on that issue of, their ice is colder. How do we get over this trust factor that's in our
Yeah.
community?
I've absolutely heard it, as well, growing up. And one, there were limited opportunities to do business with Black-owned businesses. I mean, they continue to become fewer and fewer businesses. There were some instances where if you had one bad experience, it was like, see, that's why you don't do businesses with but we don't have that same experience with non-Black
Black
owned
businesses.
business. Like if you have bad experience with a white owned bank, you never say, well, I won't do businesses with a majority bank. I will not do businesses with a large bank because I don't get the care that I need. We just move to another large bank. For example, there's not a OneUnited Bank, and you're in Miami, you're in LA, and you're in Boston. But now you can bank. You have virtual banks.
We're
How
everywhere.
can how
Absolutely.
can someone who is committed to banking Black get an account and a deposits in OneUnited Bank? How can I go about doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. So you should know that 90% of our customers bank with us solely online. And
Okay.
in fact, even though we are in those three cities, we are in every state. We have customers in every state. And they go to oneunited.com, ONEunited.com, sign up for an account. They're able to do everything. They can transfer money, they can get a debit card, they do direct deposit. We pay people 2 days early. So we give you, your payroll check 2 days early, up to 2 days early. You actually can access your money. We have over 100,000 surcharge-free ATMs, more than any other bank in the country. That goes to that need to be twice as good. You
Yeah.
can even go to a Citibank branch or a Chase bank ATM and access your money for free if you are a OneUnited customer. So yes, we recognize that we have to be twice as good, and we are, and we are.
Yes.
And yes, when, people think about it, when's the last time you walked into a branch? I mean, it's just
I
um
don't.
rare. We're just trying
I
not
hardly
to,
ever
right? We're
do.
all trying not to.
Yeah. And I think and that there I was just demonstrating that's part of the challenge is that we don't have good information or we don't take time to get good information or to challenge these assumptions that we make about doing business or the reason why we don't do business. Like I don't go to a branch. I do everything digital online through my app. We can take pictures of checks to make deposits. I mean, it's just so easy now to do at your fingertips. I've had those same, experiences, and I too am working at how do I keep money in my community? How do I let go of some of those scripts that don't
Yeah.
serve me and that don't serve my community? I have real estate property, and we go through these long things around, who a person is, what their credit score tells them, what their circumstances. And I've been in circumstances, myself where this doesn't reflect who I am or what I'm have the ability to do now and moving forward. So when we do look at tenants who need a
Mhm.
place to live, we know that moms
Yeah,
can
yes.
make money happen. We know they're committed to keeping a safe and clean environment for their children, and they will prioritize their living moving forward regardless as to what their circumstances may have been previously. So making those commitments where you can make the commitments. And so I try to
Mhm.
do my part and encourage
Yes.
other people to do their part as well.
No, I think it's something that I think our community has embraced. I mean, there was a time when people didn't even know, as an example, that Black banks existed, or
I
they didn't
know.
believe. I used to say, yeah, yeah, I'm not only the
Yeah.
president, I'm the owner. There's no like white man behind the curtain.
No.
So we're getting better at recognizing our strengths. And that's actually goes back to, how we started this conversation and my belief in something called asset framing, because,
Yes,
there is a tendency for our community to, or not for our community, but for others to focus on our challenges as opposed to our assets. Yes.
absolutely. And we're not exempt,
And we're not
from
exempt.
that. We're not exempt from that
Yeah.
either. I have so much enjoyed having this
Yeah.
conversation with
Same
you.
here. Same
I
here,
would
Kim.
like to encourage anyone listening to this to share this episode with folks in their network. I would like them to join the conversation. Here's what I would like to challenge people to do, Terry, and I hope that you would join me in this challenge to tag their favorite Black woman-owned business
A great
and
idea.
use the
Yes.
hashtag Black Women Wealth
Yes. Great idea.
and encourage other people to listen. You demonstrated very clearly the importance of keeping our dollars in our community. And one way that we can do that is put our deposits. When we get our payroll check, have it deposited in OneUnited Bank because we can
Yes.
get our paycheck how many days earlier?
2 days early. 2 days
2 days
early.
early, 2 days early. And so, where can people go to learn about the down payment assistance that you
Yep. Yep.
referenced earlier
Yep.
for
Yep.
2020? You start for next year, 2025?
Yeah, but they need to start getting ready now. So
Getting ready
that's
now. Okay.
yep. So if you go to oneunited.com/home loan, and it's the information you'll see first time home buyer program, on that page. But the actual program will be launched shortly. And
Okay.
so look out for it and definitely start, even though the money is going to be available in 2025, you really do need to start getting ready now.
Okay. So,
So
there
you
are
can
some
get that
prerequisites.
$50,000 down payment assistance. Yes.
$50,000 down payment assistance for people who first time home buyers in
Yes.
LA, Miami, and Boston.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
And first time home buyer just means you haven't owned a home for 3 years. It's
Haven't
not
owned a
like
home
you
for
haven't
three
owned a
years.
home ever, but you just
Okay.
haven't owned it for 3 years.
That is exciting. All
Yes,
right.
it is.
Miami, Boston, and LA. I may have to look for some new property.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Definitely refer people to us because
All right.
we're
I will
we're
definitely.
yeah.
All right. We will share it with our networks. Terry, it has been a pleasure. I am so glad that we are in conversation again. Empowering Black women economically, again, is not just about equity. It's about driving progress for everyone because when Black women thrive, everyone
Everyone.
thrives. And
Agree.
so, thank you for your time.
Thank
It's
you for
amazing talking with
having
you. We'll be in conversation again soon. I am very sure of it. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Kerry. That was great being here.
Thank you.